Funding for This Is Nashville comes from Burr and Foreman Law Firm, serving clients with transactional, litigation, and regulatory needs. Discovering how each client defines a win and working with them every step of the way to achieve it. Burr.com.
I'm Khalil A. Colonna, and this is Nashville. The month of January saw massive and fast-moving changes to immigration policy at both the state and federal levels. President Trump's administration has pledged to deport approximately 11 million people who lack permanent legal status. And last week, the Tennessee state legislature passed a sweeping immigration law to support Trump's planned mass deportation. Now, joining us today to discuss the effects of these policies on immigrant and refugee communities in Nashville are Judith Clerjune from the Tennessee Immigrant and Refugee Rights Coalition, Max Rykoff from the Nashville International Center for Empowerment, and WPLN reporters Char Daston and Rose Gilbert. But first, ACLU Legal Director Sarah Yarbrough and WPLN reporter Marianna Bacallao are here to dissect the comprehensive new immigration law passed last week by the Tennessee state legislature. And again, it is your turn to talk. So call us 615-760-2000. That's 615-760-2000, because we want to know from you, is our immigration policy headed in the right direction? Now, last week, the Tennessee legislature passed a comprehensive new immigration law that includes several measures. We're going to take a look at it piece by piece. First, I do want to welcome Stella and Marianna to the show. Thank you both for being here.
Thanks for having us.
Okay, so this law creates a new, quote, centralized immigration enforcement division to enforce immigration laws here. Marianna, can you give us more clarity and tell us about it?
Yeah, so this will be a 4-person team led by a governor appointee. Essentially, what they're doing is coordinating state and federal efforts, immigration efforts. Of course, immigration is a federal issue. There are ways in which local law enforcement can partner with ICE, the Immigration Customs Enforcement, in order to, be deputized as ICE agents and carry out those sorts of operations locally where they might know the people better. Currently, only Greene and Knox County's sheriff's offices are part of that existing program. This would basically, at the state level, try to coordinate that and try to incentivize it. The State House approved $5 million in grants to essentially give out to local law enforcement who participate in the program.
In reading the tea leaves, what do you expect or suspect other law enforcement agencies across the state to get on board with this?
I think there's a good chance. I think the law enforcement agencies that have already kind of, publicly said no, they're not going to be forced to, partner with ICE. Here locally, the sheriff's office in Davidson County was once a part of the program, quit the program. I don't see them going back to the program. But in some of those districts where, a lot of people support immigration enforcement, you might see a lot more cooperation.
Now, the bill is also going to change driver's license designs for people who are for Tennesseans without citizenship. What's the reaction to that been so far?
Well, a lot of, advocates say that this is something that is meant to instill fear, that a lot of these policies are, to make people afraid of being out in their communities, of, children going to school, people going to churches. And so a lot of people see this as an extension to that. But I understand that there is some more things that go into that with regards to voting.
Now, last week we talked about this with the mayor. There's a provision which states that local elected officials could face felony charges if they vote for sanctuary policies for immigrants. As we know, it's already illegal in Tennessee to declare a sanctuary city. Clarify this policy for us, because we brought it up to Mayor O'Connell when he was on the show last week.
Yeah, of course. So this is something that would, already sanctuary policies are, it's illegal to, have them. In this case, it would be a felony charge even if a local official voted in favor, even if, the measure doesn't pass. There's a lot of constitutional concerns that, Democrats have drawn, and even, I believe, State Senator Todd Gardenhire, who's a Republican, was the only one to vote against the bill. And he said specifically that this is, we're telling an elected official how to vote, and he criticized the immigration bill specifically because of that segment. So, and we're likely to see, legal challenges to that already. Metro has, made some comments indicating that.
Stella, talk to us about the constitutional concerns with this bill, potential law. What are they?
Right. So I think this bill is in conversation a little bit with what we saw happen in Memphis when their city council tried to get certain gun control referenda added on to their ballot. The state acted very swiftly and threatening to withhold funding from Memphis and threatening to take other kind of actions because even though these ordinances would be preempted by state law, they didn't even want people to vote on them. And so in some ways, this law kind of concretizes, and there's another bill that's been introduced that does similar financial penalties as well, that effort to make it so that local officials not only can't even, introduce a sanctuary policy, which has already been banned, but they can't even vote for it. They can't even discuss it. They cannot support it in any way, and they'll face personal criminal liability and removal from office. So I think this is, in some ways, it's hard to pick a constitutional framework in which to analyze it because it's so unprecedented. You have a long history of regulating legislators when they can vote. They can't vote when they have a conflict of interest, when they would personally benefit from voting. But this is one of the first times that we're seeing the content of the vote itself being regulated, which is saying you cannot vote in favor of this one particular policy. And the definition of sanctuary policy is actually quite broad. So you also have like some separation of powers issues. So ultimately, right, Memphis prevailed, going back to that case and going back to a prior case, a Tennessee Supreme Court case from the 2000s, where they said that there was a separation of powers issue. So when you have the executive agency essentially getting into the business of sorting out whether or not local laws and state laws conflict, they're taking away power from the judiciary. That's the role of the courts to do that. So if a local ordinance is preempted by state law or is otherwise violating state law, the remedy is to take it to the courts, for the state to say, hey, you know what, actually this ordinance is preempted, and to let that be heard by a judge, because that's what judges do. Mm-hmm. They figure out those conflicts.
Is the ACLU preparing a legal challenge to this legislation?
We are.
That's about all you can say, huh?
Yep.
Okay. All right. Thank you. Now, Marianna, last week we saw another immigration-related bill filed that challenges everyone's right to a public education. Republican Representative William Lamberth and Senator Bo Watson are sponsors of this bill that would, here it is, allow districts to prevent immigrant children lacking permanent legal status from enrolling in public school. Tell us, what are you hearing about this bill?
Yeah, so this is, some of the lawmakers have said this is specifically to challenge a 1982 U.S. Supreme Court case that established, undocumented students have a right to public education. I was at the state capitol this morning, and this is what House Speaker Cameron Sexton had to say about the bill.
We talk to teachers all the time, and having students in there who are not citizens and English as a second language is causing problems in the classroom. It's causing problems for the students who are currently in there, who should be in there, meaning that they're legal residents, that they live in the community, and it's affecting the ability for them to teach the students based on some of that stuff.
So that bill filed this week, it comes right after the Rutherford County School Board passed a resolution kind of urging lawmakers to, quote, secure the border, because a lot of these they say, the number of English language first-time learner students that they have has skyrocketed in the past couple of years. They say they've had to open up, 25 additional positions, and they talk about the financial strain that puts on the district. So it seems like it is coming from, some of those cases.
Stella, is there an argument for educating these kids?
There's such a strong argument for educating these kids. And spoiler alert, that Texas, in the original Plyler case, that's exactly what Texas argued, is a strain on financial resources. And that was squarely rejected by the Supreme Court. And that's because they found that the Equal Protection Clause applies to any person within the jurisdiction of a state, citizen or non-citizen. And that, they said specifically that, and I've got the quote here, when a state denies a discrete group of innocent children the free public education that it offers to other children residing within its borders, that denial must be justified by showing that furthers some substantial interest. And so a blanket denial on behalf of children who have literally no role in figuring out and where they happen to be living at that moment, that's a decision of adults. And so the court said in particular, innocent children who have had no role should not be excluded from public education. And it really goes, Plyler's a beautiful decision, and it goes through the important and crucial role that public education plays in folding people into the fabric of American society. And I think that is something that is profoundly important, that when you have children who are coming here to live in the United States, to be a part of our society, of course they should be educated just as much as any other child should be educated, because they literally will be the doctors, the lawyers, the teachers, the people who are running the country in a generation or two, and they should be educated just along with any other child.
This is another piece of legislation that at best looks constitutionally suspect. And we've seen fast tracking of some laws to get them in front of the Supreme Court quickly. If unconstitutionality is the point, will this bill be one of them?
Yes. So, yes, unconstitutionality is the point here. They know exactly what they're doing. The law is almost exactly like the law that Texas passed before. And it is the point. And they will be I think the question is how many different lawsuits there are going to be over this law. And of course, it's going to go up. I'm imagining that, the long game for the state legislature is to keep passing these bills that are unconstitutional. We saw that in the abortion context. We saw that in many other contexts to get a Supreme Court challenge teed up.
Okay, now it's your turn to talk Thursday, and we want to hear from you. Call us up, 615-760-2000, 615-760-2000. I'm in conversation with Stella Yarbrough. She is the legal director of the ACLU of Tennessee, and WPLN's Marianna Bacallao. We're going to go to Ricky in Franklin. Ricky, thank you so much for giving us a call, friend. What would you like to share with us?
First, I want to say thank you for what you do for our state, our city. And I'm of Hispanic descent, and I just think that anyone who is of ethnic background and voted for Trump, well, you voted this in. You've created this monster. You've caused the state of Tennessee to basically down to what Trump wants, which is basically an ethnic cleansing of our states. I hate that this has happened, but this is our future, and this is what we get. Thank you.
Ricky, before you go, what type of conversations have you been having with family, friends, and community members about these new proposed laws and a change to our immigration policies?
I don't understand them. I don't think people realize how these people, these undocumented, these people that are growing up in our country that don't come from here, the knowledge that they bring, the way that they help this country along, the way that they do turn into our future doctors, they do turn into our future scientists, they're the future of our country, along with the children that were born here. I mean, we are a nation of immigrants. The only people that actually belong here are the Indians, the original Indians that, it's their country, and look what we've done to them.
I understand. I'm curious about the community in Franklin. If you've had any conversations, I know this is touchy and it can be very, very emotional. I'm just curious, if you've talked to your neighbors about this and expressed these sentiments to them.
Not really. I mean, it's hard. We're in a society of the me now, no longer of the we. So there is not any talking with neighbors about anything, because when you see their signs on their door, or on their lawns that state what they're basically voting for, it's hard to. You can't talk to somebody who doesn't believe in facts, who listens to one man's rhetoric about how these people are all criminals, and then takes that as their they're facts. So you can't. It's no way to even get past that part of even having a conversation with them.
I appreciate you calling in and expressing your thoughts. I will say this, though. Recently on This is Nashville, we've had several conversations and with guests who bring up the point of talking to people who believe differently than you. You can check out One Small Step. You can talk about the Conversation Coalition. We've done quite a few episodes on that. Perhaps that's a resource with tools so you can bridge the gap, cross the aisle, and cross the street and talk to some of your neighbors. Again, Ricky, thank you so much for calling. Really appreciate it, my friend.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Ricky said something really interesting, and I want you both to answer this as much as you can. I understand that you're a journalist and you're an attorney representing the ACLU. He said, we're in a country of me and not a country of we anymore. As human beings, as American citizens, and when you think about this, what does that statement mean to you?
I think it goes back. I mean, I was thinking about this on the way over here, about that phrase, fabric of society. And that it really is a fabric of society in terms of why we want to educate all the children who are present here. And that when you do pull one string, it can unravel. And that I think there is this kind of myopic focus on the idea that we can only educate some people, or only some people can get access to the courts, or only some people are citizens and have citizenship rights, that's not going to, in the long term, affect all of us.
Thank you. Marianna?
I don't know if any of my observations from reporting on the State House really apply to that question. Sorry.
Okay, I got it. I understand. And thank you both so much. Many thanks to ACLU Legal Director Stella Yarbrough and WPLN reporter Marianna Bacallao. Thank you both so much for being with us.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Okay, guys, we're going to take a quick break. When we return, we're going to try to get a better understanding of the federal immigration policy and the rights that immigrants have in our country. The phones are open, so call us up with your question or comment, 615-760-2000. Stay with us. This is Nashville.
Funding for This is Nashville comes from you, our listeners, and Music City Prep Clinic, Nashville-based provider for PrEP, and offering comprehensive sexual health services in an environment designed to be safe, professional, and shame-free. Learn more at musiccityprep.org.
I'm Khalil A. Kulona, and this is Nashville. Since being sworn in, President Donald Trump has signed several executive orders in a push to expel a record number of immigrants from the country. As uncertainty and fear grip communities, protests and actions have started to break out across the nation. Nashville saw its own rally on Monday in Centennial Park. One component of mobilization is education. What should an immigrant lacking permanent legal status do if they're stopped by police? What are their rights? What will educators do if U.S. Immigration and Customs Enforcement or ICE agents request access to students or their records in Nashville public schools? And how can communities protect themselves and their neighbors? Joining us now to answer those questions and to talk about the impact of federal immigration policy locally are Judith Clerjune. She is the Campaigns and Advocacy Director for the Tennessee Immigrant and Refugee Rights Coalition, and WPLN Char Daston. Plus, it's your turn to talk, so give us a call, 615-760-2000. That's 615-760-2000. We want to know from you, is immigration policy headed in the right direction? Judith, Char, thank you both so much for being here.
Thanks for having us.
Yep, thank you.
Okay, so Char, tell us, break this down. Who is at risk of deportation under these new administration policies?
The Trump administration has said they are prioritizing deporting undocumented immigrants with a criminal record. However, there has been some debate about what that means. At a press conference a week or two ago, the press secretary for Trump said that they interpret criminal as anyone who crossed the border, which is not all, but a significant portion of people who are undocumented who are here. So there's some debate about what that means. And there are some people who have protected legal statuses who are more at risk than they used to be. So, for example, refugees who had been vetted, who were had travel plans to the United States has had those travel plans canceled because the Trump administration suspended the refugee program. It's also harder than ever under both the Trump and the Biden administration. It's been harder than ever to claim asylum in the U.S. So those people are at higher risk as well.
All right. Now, Judith, we're hearing rhetoric that immigrants are disproportionately criminals. Tell me this. What effect does hearing that? What does that do to that language? What does that do to immigrant families?
Yeah, we know the facts that criminals overwhelmingly immigrant communities overwhelmingly commit less crimes, right? But the very dangerous narrative that we're seeing is this blurring the lines between migration and criminality, right? Migration is something that is as old as time. It is something that we have done throughout human history. You move another state for a better job. You move to different countries to protect your family or find better opportunity. That is not something that is criminal. That is something that is deeply human. And unfortunately, we're seeing this administration blur the lines between migration, what we do as humans, and criminality.
Continue. I'm sorry.
Yeah. And so I think it's very dangerous when we are trying to paint our neighbors as the enemy, right? That is setting the ground for something very dangerous in a direction that we do not want our country to move in.
What have some of the families you've worked with at the Tennessee Immigrant and Refugee Rights Coalition, what have they said to the organization about this language and where they are emotionally?
Yeah, it's really disheartening. It's really scary, right? That people are worried if they go to work, will they come back home to be with their kids? Or if kids go to school, will they come back and find their parents? Because again, these are regular people, right? We know that our immigration system is deeply broken. There are people who have been here for decades wanting a pathway, wanting to, file an application to become a citizen, but there isn't, right? There isn't an application to file. And instead of fixing the process and fixing our immigration system to allow for that, we're choosing to name and deem people as criminals, which is completely false.
Now, Char, you met a man named Luis Cortez, who is a successful businessman in Middle Tennessee. Mr. Cortez has lived in the country for almost 25 years, and since 2011, he's been protected by DACA, an Obama-era program that gives temporary legal protections for undocumented immigrants that were brought here as children. But now he feels like he needs a plan for what will happen if he's deported. Let's listen to some of that conversation.
In these homes that I come from, this is a conversation at the dinner table every night. Everybody's saying, what's going to happen? What if? And I can guarantee you that every person that is here illegally has a plan.
This isn't some abstract fear. When Luis was 17, his parents got deported.
Just seeing my mom and my dad in handcuffs as a 17-year-old kid, I tried to punch the glass to get to them. And I had a sheriff, just grab me and grab my dad and drag both of us out. And I always remember just screaming to the sheriff deputy, let him go, he's not a criminal.
For years, Congress and presidents have talked about giving DACA recipients a path to citizenship. That hasn't happened. So Cortez remains vulnerable to President Trump's promised mass deportations. But Cortez still sees a future where things work out differently.
I have hope, like I've always had, that good will come out of this and that God will touch the heart of whoever has the keys to this White House.
Char, that's quite a story that this young man has.
He was very generous in sharing his story with me. Yes, absolutely. Yeah, when he was 17, his parents got deported. That left him on his own. He had to leave school as a 17-year-old and find work to survive, basically. And, he mentioned every family, and it's not just families where everyone is undocumented. There are a lot of mixed status families where some people in the family are citizens and some people are permanent residents. And then there are others who've been waiting years for their asylum case. And so their status is a lot murkier. And a lot of people are trying to figure out what happens if our family gets separated.
I imagine. Okay, we got Sarah in Columbia, Tennessee, giving us a call. Sarah, thank you so much for calling. What do you want to share with us?
Well, first of all, I am not against immigration. But everybody's like, they're not criminals, but by definition, they are criminals. A criminal is someone who breaks the law. If they come over here illegally, they're breaking the law, so therefore they're a criminal. That doesn't make them bad people. That may make them scared or whatever, but by definition, they are a criminal, and that's what we need to address. We need to make it where they come legally, and if they did come legally, I think that the majority of the population would be more supportive of them and help them out. That you can't say they're not criminals, because if they break the law, just like an American citizen, if we break the law, we're a criminal.
I understand that.
That's just my only thing.
But there's different, please hang on. There's different levels of breaking the law. Shoplifting is a lot different from murder.
Correct.
And
but it's still a criminal offense.
I understand that, but should we potentially have a different tier for people, not treat them all with a blanket and say that you're a criminal? You know, I agree with anyone. Any person coming here from another country who commits a violent crime against another or a very serious crime, they must, answer to our criminal justice system. But someone who is potentially fleeing a war-torn country to be here for an opportunity to be better, who is willing to work hard and do what you have to do to become a part of our American fabric, do you think that possibly we should look at them differently, even though, technically they may have broken a law and come here without documentation illegally?
Well, what we need to focus on is having programs to help those people who want to come legally. But when you sneak across the border, that is not an upstanding thing. And I understand, I feel for those people. I'm sorry that they are going through the things they are. And I'm grateful that the country that I live in, we don't have to face that. But at the end of the day, they are not following our laws. And unfortunately, because of that, people who are hardened criminals also sneak in, and they get lumped into the same thing. Just like Americans are looked at a certain way because of the things that the world sees us doing, even if we don't agree with it, we're still lumped in that. And unfortunately, that's just the way society is. But, technically, when people say, well, they're not criminals, technically, by definition, they are, even though they may not be bad people or, like you said, violent criminals. But they're still breaking our laws, and our laws are there for a reason.
I definitely.
And any other country would not allow us, if we as Americans went to another country, we would have to follow their laws and their guidelines, get our visa, do the things that we have to do. So why is America different?
I understand.
Because a lot of it is for security.
I'm with you on that. I'm totally agreeing with that. Okay, but question for you, like being here on an overstayed visa is kind of a civil matter, not a criminal matter. There is one exception to this, and it's a crime to be in the U.S. without permission if you've been deported before. That's what the ACLU explained that to us, because there's several people who are here as criminal misdemeanors, as you said, illegal entry, but a majority of migrants came here through legal, though temporary, means. Should we even consider, you said we should have more programs, but in the top of the show, we heard how those programs have been shuttered, not just under the Trump administration, but under the Biden administration too. What do we need to do? How would you like to see us reform our immigration policies so that people who should be here and deserve to be here can, and we keep the folks that really shouldn't out?
Well, if they came over here originally illegally, then we should be, those are the migrants that we should be focusing on, trying to help them figure out, okay, what can we do now? Yes, I understand those people, they need help because they did do it the right way. So we should, in my opinion, bend over backwards to help them, unless they have committed a more serious crime. Then they shouldn't even be in consideration. But the most of the ones that's sneaking over, those are the ones I think that people need to realize, okay, those need to go back home. Even for whatever reason, they did not do it the right way.
I hear that.
I don't know what the answer. I'm not a politician. I'm not, law is not my, area of expertise. But I do agree we do need to help these people, but it needs to be done the right way. And we need to quit focusing on all this other fluff and take care of the problem at hand and help the ones who are actually trying to do good.
That's right. Look, I'm no legal expert either. I'm just like you, a concerned American citizen. Sarah, thank you. You're a gem. Thank you so much for giving us a call. Really appreciate this, okay?
You have a blessed day. Bye.
You too. Bye. All right. Now, Judith, TIRRC has a Know Your Rights education component in its programming. Tell us what it is and what it does.
Yeah, so, right now we believe that everybody should make sure they have access to accurate information, right? So if you are an immigrant person who has a pending case, make sure you are speaking with an attorney about your option. If you are an immigrant family, make sure you are attending Know Your Rights sessions or getting into contact with different organizations who provide those resources. Because even though the law is changing, you still have rights, right? We still have a constitution, you still have rights. And so we want to make sure that everybody is equipped with the knowledge and information to protect themselves. So if you go on our website, you can access some of that information. And also, I think, one thing I want everybody to know, especially because right now there's a lot of conversations about where ICE can access. ICE still needs a judicial warrant, right? So whether it's a school or a church, make sure you know what that looks like. And if ICE were to show up, that you are requesting that judicial warrant that has been signed by a judge.
Okay, so what should someone do if an ICE agent comes to their door?
Yeah, so first I would, urge for someone to ask for a warrant, right? Do you have not just an ICE warrant, right? Because there are internal memos or internal documents that they can create, but ask specifically for a judicial warrant that has been signed by a judge. So that should be your first step. But right now, I would urge everyone to be prepared. So make sure you are talking to an attorney. Make sure you are attending Know Your Rights sessions where people can really talk you through the details of what you need to know in this moment.
Thank you. If you're just tuning in, this is Nashville, and I'm your host, Khalil Ekolona. We're discussing federal immigration policies and knowing the rights of immigrants and how that can help bring clarity in these very, very confusing times. My guests are Judith Clerjune, the Campaigns and Advocacy Director from the Tennessee Immigrant and Refugee Rights Coalition, and WPLN reporter Char Daston. It's your turn to talk, so give us a call, 615-760-2000. I know you got a lot of thoughts and ideas about this, Nashville and Middle Tennessee. Give us a call, 615-760-2000. Judith, are there specific elements that people should be aware of during something like police stops?
Yeah. So again, as I said, you still have your rights. And so right now, you do not there's a lot of questions that you do not have to answer, right? So again, I am not an attorney, so I don't want to give individual legal advice. But I think remember that you still have rights. There are questions about your immigration status that you do not have to answer in a regular police stop. And so I think for everyone, if you are concerned about yourself and your immigration status, make sure you know what those are, and that you, again, are reaching out to organizations and reaching out to folks who can give you those legal details for your own individual status.
There's a lot of folks who are very anxious about the critical role that schools play in this. What can educators do?
Yeah, so there's a lot that we can all do in all of our positions. Right now, I think for schools, understanding the rights of students, right? That there are information that you do not have to share about your students, that there are protections in place. And also whether it's your classroom or the school, that you don't have to give access. Again, that if ICE shows up, they still need a warrant. And so as a teacher, school principal, superintendent, understanding those rights and protections that exist for students currently and knowing how to say no if they are not providing the proper document in order to access or enter the premises.
Now, Char, what's the official policy of Metro Nashville Public Schools if MNPS and ICE agents request access to students or their records here in the city?
I think Judith alluded to it. The official policy is that they will need to show the school a legal warrant to either enter a building and come and access a student or to access school records, which are protected under FERPA. That's the right that gives just parents and students the right to see their school information.
All right.
Yeah.
Thank you. We're going to go. We have another call from Renardo in Antioch. Renardo, thank you so much for calling. What do you want to share with us, my friend?
Hey, thank you for taking my call. First of all, I already know someone who was 13 years old. ICE went into the school and took him, and they took his mother. Now, it didn't happen in the state of Tennessee. It happened in Arizona because my prima is the teacher out there. But like that lady just read off saying, know the laws and ask if you have a warrant. My question to them, how are they to know the laws? They don't even know the language and don't even know the American culture. Like you said earlier, they're trying to escape war-torn or whatever reason, and they're here. But yet you're telling them the legal way, know the laws, know know your rights. How can they know that when they don't even know language?
I understand that. A question I have is how many Americans know the laws? People who were born here. That's one question that I have exactly. But, I can see her point of view, Renardo, in saying that, it is important. If I'm going to move to another country, say I want to move to Vietnam, I'm going to learn as much as I can about that country. Now, that is saying that from a place of privilege and comfort because I'm not leaving a distressed situation. But I'm going to ask you what I asked her as well. What can we do to really clean up and clarify our immigration system? So, we let the people in that we want in, that would be good for our society, and we keep the people who would be harmful to our society out.
Well, since America's so high strung on money, why don't they impose a tax for the people that are here? And then for the employers that are hiring them, have them pay an extra tax for hiring illegal immigrants, because I have no problem with them being here. I want you to know that at first. Mm-hmm. But with America being so hung up on money, why can't they just impose a tax and then make money off of the tax? Because these people that are here now, they're paying sales tax and everything. They're adding so much to the economy, but yet they're trying to get rid of them. And like the lady said, yeah, there are criminals. There's a lot of American criminals here, but they're paying their taxes and they're supporting this economy. Why are they targeting these people anymore? And they're not targeting any of the European immigrants here, because I'm sure there's European illegal immigrants that are here as well. Yeah. But they can blend in. But if you're black or brown, you can't blend in, so you're going to be targeted. So if you're going to be targeted, why don't they tax them? That's another question, an issue altogether. Judith, real quick.
Yeah, so really, really great point to bring up. I will say right now, there are about 6 million people in this country who are on temporary statuses that they have to renew about every 2 years and pay hundreds of dollars when they renew, right? For example, DACA, upwards of $400-600 every 2 years when you renew for that status. And unfortunately, right now, all of those people are in danger because the administration has already signaled that they want to cut and end some of those programs. And so I think there is as he said, immigrant communities contribute so much to our economy, pay sales tax, and yet they are being punished doubly, right? There is no pathway to legal status in this country right now for so many people. And they're already paying for those statuses in addition to paying for taxes without access to a permanent legal pathway. And so I think it's really unfair, and we have to figure out how do we make sure the system is fair, not just for people who are rich, right, but for hardworking people who just want to make a good life and call this place home.
That's what we have to figure out. Renardo, thank you so much for giving us a call, my friend. You have a beautiful day, okay? I suppose it is. All right. I want to thank you both for being here. Judith Clerjune is the Campaigns and Advisory and Advocacy Director from the Tennessee Immigrant and Refugee Rights Coalition, and Char Daston is a reporter for WPLN. Thanks so much.
Thanks, Khalil. Always a pleasure to be here.
Really great to have you both. Okay, we're taking one last break, and stick with us because when we come back, we're going to learn how the immigration confusion and consternation is impacting refugee families here in Nashville. We still want to hear from you, so give us a call, 615-760-2000. It's your turn to talk. Hit us up. I'm Khalil A. Colonna, and this is Nashville. Welcome back. We've been talking about immigration and the new policies here in our country and how it's affecting our city and state. Now, immigrants lacking permanent legal status are not only the only people really affected by these policies. Those with refugee status or who are awaiting entry into the refugee program are also feeling the effects. Max Rykoff of the Nashville International Center for Empowerment, or NICE, he joins us to discuss how his organization is planning to adjust to these policies. And WPLN reporter Rose Gilbert is here to talk about one family that's already feeling the impact. It's good to have you both back here with us. Really appreciate it. And we want you to call us up. 615-760-2000. Call us with your questions or comments. I know this is emotional. I know this is touchy, but this is why we do this, to hear from you so we can engage in conversation with each other. Now, Max, President Trump signed an executive order suspending the U.S. refugee admissions program, and that cuts off federal funding for refugee resettlement. Walk us through the scope of who is impacted and what that means for refugees who are ready to come here to the States.
Absolutely. First of all, thanks for having us both on. I want to quickly define what a refugee is in the U.S. immigration system, because we use the word refugee pretty broadly to mean people who are displaced from their homes. But in the U.S., a refugee is somebody who's been invited to the United States through a specific Department of State program. They have been referred to by the United Nations, have undergone a series of extensive interviews and screenings that last about 2 years. And then they are approved to travel to the United States, and they are given certain protections and a pathway to citizenship. Now, the executive order that President Trump signed on the 20th suspended the U.S. refugee admissions program nationally. NICE is one of 3 local resettlement agencies. We were expecting 78 individuals to arrive in February. These are people who have gone through the process, quote unquote, the right way, who have gone through all the vettings and screenings required and were authorized to travel. They now have to go back to pretty perilous circumstances. The other 2 agencies are in a similar position. And separate from that, on the 24th of January, we received a pretty oddly worded memo about a stop work order. We were confused about what it meant at the time, the whole refugee resettlement community was, and we found out that funding for those who had already arrived in the United States, who the U.S. had welcomed, was cut off. And that's funding. It's like $1,500 a person that goes toward their initial housing, while agencies like ours are working to get them employed. So that has created a crisis in the refugee resettlement community, not only for NICE, but all around the country.
Now, Rose, you recently spoke with a Kurdish asylee who fled Turkey due to threatened imprisonment and is at risk of being caught up in this in President Trump's new executive orders. We're going to hear just a quick bit of that story.
I meet Radur for tea and kebabs at a local market in South Nashville. Radur is a pseudonym, one he picked for himself because it means far from home in Kurdish. WPLN News is not using his real name because he fears that he and his family could be deported. Radur is a Kurdish farmer from Turkey, and he's been living in Middle Tennessee with his wife and young son for more than a year. It's been a big adjustment.
Because it's a different culture and different language, everything is different.
But they've embraced their new home. Radur has a job at a restaurant, and his wife is expecting their second child this spring.
I mean, everything is different. But in America, in U.S., I can say I'm happy.
Radur made the decision to come to America about 2 years ago. One day, he woke up in the early hours of the morning to armed police at his door. They were there to arrest him for some old social media posts, including this one.
All right, we're fading from that because we want to get to your phone calls and we don't have much time, but you can hear that entire story and read Rose Gilbert's article if you go to WPLN.org. Now, Rose, you mentioned in the story that Radur has started the asylum process and he has an attorney. Does he have the documentation that shows he can illustrate where he is, that he's in the middle of this process?
I mean, yes, he has an asylum application. What he doesn't have is, like permanent status here in the U.S. So I want to back up for a second. Just as Max defined refugee, I want to define asylum because it's different.
Okay.
And an asylum seeker is a person who fears harm or persecution in their own country. They came to America, and to apply for asylum, you have to be at an official border crossing or already in the United States. So this isn't something, you can't be at home in Turkey and apply for asylum from there. You have to come here to do that. And while your case is kind of pending, you're protected from deportation. But there's a separate executive order, separate from the one that suspended the refugee resettlement program, that suspended the asylum process, which has left a lot of people confused about, hey, and can I be deported now? There have been court dates canceled. There have been biometrics dates. So when you apply for asylum, you get fingerprinted and stuff like that. Mm-hmm. Those dates have been canceled. So people like Radur and his family are sitting there like, my court date's not for a year. What's my situation until then?
That's very tense. Do you know what his attorney is advising his clients to do?
Well, in this case, it's kind of ironic in the sense that Radur was fled Turkey because he was sentenced to prison for tweeting something pro-Kurdish. So he's got very low trust in the legal system. And then he came to the U.S. and his attorney made a big show of being like, well, you have rights here. It's different. You have rights in America. The asylum process will protect you. And now he's like, watch out. Like even when I first interviewed him, he did not request anonymity. But as things have gotten a little bit less certain for him, he did request that, and we granted it based on that fear of deportation.
Now, Max, what is happening to the people who are in limbo, the ones who had their appointments to claim asylum canceled?
So in terms of asylum seekers, people who have already made an appointment for asylum, they could spend years waiting, right? And we don't know what's going to happen with their cases. So you file for asylum usually with an attorney. You can wait years. You go through, like Rose said, biometrics and all that. But there are people who are going to be living in limbo with fear for their immigration status. You can, as of right now, things change all the time. You can work legally. You can apply at NICE and other places to have a work authorization as an asylum seeker, which you then update regularly every 6 months or so, which gives you legal status. You can't be deported if you're in the proceedings currently as the law stands. And the same thing for refugees. If you are a refugee, you are here legally. There is a lot of fear in the community about if this is going to affect me, all these new laws that are being passed. But if you are a refugee, came here under that status, you cannot be deported. But we advise our clients and our community members to keep their documentation on them at all times in case they do get stopped by law enforcement. So it's a really difficult situation that immigrant and refugee communities are facing right now.
Okay, I want to thank you so much for being here. We're going to go to one call. We only have time for one call. Ernie, we're putting you in. I've got like 2 minutes left. What would you like to share with us?
I appreciate it, Khalil. It's been very interesting to listen to different perspectives of our neighbors on immigration, which is a really important issue for our country. I was recently having a conversation with my mom, who has a lot of concerns about immigration, and we were talking about it. And over Thanksgiving dinner, she had mentioned that my great-grandfather was a stowaway who came into the country from Czechoslovakia illegally. And it was just kind of interesting, and I began to think about that. I thought, how many of us, if we were to look back at our own family histories, have illegal immigration coming into the country, not through LSI or through some legal format? I think it's more common than we might want to admit. And it was kind of interesting for my mom to have that aha moment as we were talking about the concerns of illegal immigration. I mean, it's a policy issue, in my opinion, Khalil. I think that there's people here. We've got to address it. There needs to be a pathway to citizenship so we can get these people integrated into our society. Deportation is the wrong move, in my opinion.
Thank you so much for calling and offering your insights and telling us that story. I think I agree with you. It is a policy issue, but it also seems to be an issue of sentiment, of the heart, and what kind of society we want to live in. As you mentioned, this history that many people may not know about their own ancestry. Potentially, folks did come in illegally. 45 seconds left. We just want to wrap this up. What would you like to share with everyone, Max?
To advocate, to make your voices be heard, that refugees and immigrants are fundamental to the soul of this country. It is fundamental to who we are, and without it, I think there is a certain darkness that comes to the United States.
Really appreciate you being here. And Ernie, thank you for calling us, sir. Thank you so much. Have a good day, all right?
You got it. Thank you, sir.
Yes, sir. All right. Max Rykoff is with the Nashville International Center for Empowerment, or NICE, and Rose Gilbert is a reporter for WPLN. Again, if you want to hear her whole story, go to WPLN.org. And thank you all for tuning in this hour. This is Nashville as a production of Nashville Public Radio. If you're going to call us in earlier. We do want to get to your calls. Again, that's 615-760-2000. We're going to be doing it next Thursday. Today's episode was produced by Mary Mancini. It was directed by Tasha A.F. Lemley. Helping us out on the boards is Michael Pollard. Thank you very much, my man. Catherine Cece's was on the phones. The masterminds behind our theme music are Laurent and Namir Blade. Listen back at thisisnashville.org or wherever you get good podcasts. The conversation never ends here. Comment and tell us what you want to hear on the show by leaving us a message, 615-751-2500. You can find us on Blue Sky and Instagram, as well as X at This Is Nashville. This is Nashville. I'm Khalil Colonna. We'll see you on Monday, everybody. And be good to each other.
Funding for This Is Nashville comes from you, our listeners, and Amazon, proud sponsor of WPLN's daily show, This Is Nashville, engaging our differences so we can discover our unity. More on Amazon's community work at aboutamazon.com.